Thank you all for being willing to join me down here and to share your experience. And what's really cool is I think everybody here, although everybody has a variation of cutaneous lymphomas, has a little different experience, a little different perspective. And what my goal was to be able to share a little bit about what makes your experiences unique, because I know everybody out there, there's probably someone that said, wow, I thought I didn't fit, right? I thought there was nobody like me. And so hopefully through our panel conversation, brief panel conversation today, everyone and anyone out there will see something in one of the stories here that says, wow, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that's been grappling with this. So, thank you. What I thought I'd do is just ask each of you to do a little brief introduction, who you are, where you're from, maybe how long or what your date of diagnosis was, so we have a sense of, timeline, and then your specific diagnosis, and then we'll kind of bounce around and learn a little bit more about each of your experiences. So I'll start here with Carol. And
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. My name is Carol Bukal. I'm from Yaden, Pennsylvania, and after 11 years, I was diagnosed in 2019 with Sézary syndrome with cutaneous T-cell lymphoma.
Good morning. My name's Lori Skoog, and I was diagnosed about 4 years ago this month. And I was diagnosed with mycosis fungoides, stage 4A, but a very rare variant of it, not Sézary, but a different variation of it. And then about 2 years later, I was diagnosed through a biopsy with follicular trophic in a couple areas of my skin also. So I have both FMF and MF, so lucky me.
Hello, I'm Sabrina. I'm from Connecticut. I actually live in Manhattan. I was diagnosed in 2019. I was about 22 years old. I was misdiagnosed for about 5 to 6 years, and I have mycosis fungoides, stage 1A.
Hey there, and I'm Joe. I was diagnosed about 7 years ago with PCALCL, which is a kissing cousin to mycosis fungoides, and been having fun ever since. I live in the greater DC area.
awesome. Are we good? Yeah. The mic on? Yeah? Okay. All righty. All right, so let's see. You guys can either go first, or let's go with Lori. How about that? Sorry.
I sat in the middle because I thought I wouldn't go first.
Yeah. Sorry to put you on the spot. Well, I don't like to go in order. So, I know a little bit about your history, right? So you just mentioned you have follicular trophic and MF, and also another strange and interesting variant called granulomas slack skin. And I thought maybe you could share a little bit about, not only are we rare just in the generic sense of cutaneous lymphomas with your garden variety mycosis fungoides, if you will, or Sézary syndrome, or some of our kissing cousins in the lymphoproliferative arena. But, underneath all of that, there are rarer of the rarer of the rarer. And so I know, Lori, your challenges around grappling with that, trying to figure it out, how do you, you don't really even fit sometimes in the standard, if we have a standard mycosis fungoides pathway. So maybe you can share a little bit about that experience and your journey in navigating in a very uncertain world.
Okay, that's a lot, and it's a long story, but I'll try to make it brief. you know, one of the unique things about my journey is that I really didn't ever see a dermatologist or have any skin issues, although I had a few things like some little blackheads on my skin. I did not have a long history of going to the dermatologist undiagnosed. I literally went to my very first visit to a dermatologist and got lucky that I went to a dermatologist that had done a residency in cutaneous lymphoma and recognized it and did a biopsy in my very first visit and called me, you know, 2 months later, the biopsy results, and told me I had the disease. And from there, obviously, sorry, my allergies. From there, I was obviously in a panic and trying to figure out what the stage was, where I was, what this was I was even dealing with. And I went through a process of trying to figure out somebody in my area. I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and there's no specialists in my area. And I went through a process of finding the best lymphoma doctor who did a bunch of tests on me, and I found out I tested positive in my lymph nodes for it. So at that point, they said, okay, you're in stage 4. So now I have stage 4 cancer, and oh yeah, you gotta wait 2 months to get into a specialist. Like, you just told me I have stage 4 cancer, I gotta wait 2 months and to get in to see anybody. And so anyways, I did my best to navigate that and got in about a month, and I see a doctor down in MD Anderson. And then from there, my presentation though on my skin, I don't have any lesions or tumors or rashes. I have what they call slack skin. So my skin looks like 20 years older than it should look in a lot of areas of my body. And it just kind of hangs. And I'm like, what is going on with my skin? I'm not that old. You know, that's how I initially started my journey. So, and I was losing my hair on my legs and things like that, and under my arms. So I was like, what's going on? So that was my indicator that something weird was going on with my skin. So then they diagnosed me initially with granulomatous slack skin, which is a very rare variant of this disease. And then 2 years later, after multiple more biopsies, they keep biopsying my skin because they keep saying, do you really have this? What exactly do you have? And so they keep biopsying me. And 2 years later, they did biopsies in my scalp because I was losing my hair. They did my face, my other areas of my body, and basically said I had follicular trophic in my hair, in my scalp, in my face, and an MF in my other areas of my body. So I think under the microscope, it looks like MF, but then my presentation is just very different. They say it's deeper in my skin, and so that's a little bit about my journey. I think the thing that's unique about, and then the specialist at MD Anderson called me after I had my round of biopsies, and she said, we don't even think you have granulomatous slack skin anymore. We think that because none of the biopsies have any granulomatous, or whatever that is. It's some specific cell they see in the biopsy. And so we think you have this rare thing that we only have one other case of ever, which is called cutis laxus. Because there's a skin disease called cutis laxus, which just makes your skin, you know, lose all its elasticity and your collagen and kind of. So they named it after that, but because it still is MF. So I've been through a lot of treatments. I'm not going to talk about that right now, but that has been my journey, and I'm still living in this world of unknown. Like, am I in stage 4? Like, I don't know, you know, and I'm like, what does stage 4? Am I there? Like, or am I, you know? But right now, my treatments are working, and I'm leading a high quality life. And so I've personally had to, my journey has been trying to learn to live in this unknown space. It's just no answers anywhere. You know, you fly across the country and you see the experts, and and you get time with them, and then they're like, oh, well, you can try this, and so you really don't have any answers. They don't have a lot of people like me. They don't have a lot, they don't really know. And so have been really on a personal journey to live my best quality of life with this disease, and trying to figure out how to balance other wellness strategies, other mental strategies, and things like that with all the oncology world, the medical world. And so that's what I'm going to talk about. And I'm doing the little breakout session this afternoon, and that's what I'm hoping to have an interactive discussion with the group about.
Great. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Lori. No, I think that was good. And you just handed the mic to Carol, so perfect. So Carol, I know you also had some challenges around diagnosis and your experience with the healthcare system and people really dismissing you and what you had. And I really wanted you to share a little bit about your experience, and then how did you navigate through that and keep going, because you really hit some pretty serious roadblocks that for many people would just totally knock them out of the park, right? And,
Yes.
and they wouldn't progress. So maybe you can share a little bit about that and your experience and how you tackled that.
So I have been diagnosed with eczema, acute eczema, lichen planus, you name it, besides cutaneous lymphoma. I am going to dermatologist after dermatologist, just being given a cream, not being heard. I was complaining for itching, burning. Oh my goodness. I was not even, I was dismissed. I was just given, every dermatologist, I would say, okay, please look at my skin. Please, because there is something wrong. I don't think it's eczema, because I'm reading about eczema and something is different. But you have eczema, you'll be fine, but it's not going to get any better, but we could keep it under control. Okay. And I just kept on going. I moved to Pennsylvania, and seeing a dermatologist, I was given the latest drug for eczema. Every 2 weeks I would go, you have eczema. I did the light treatment. I did every treatment, and I just kept on getting worse. And after 2019, about June 2019, he says, I did a blood test, and your T cells, your white blood count is so high, but I don't know why it's so high. I'm gonna get you to a hematologist. Went to a hematologist. They did a biopsy of my lymph node and came back. He says, you have cancer. So what kind of cancer do I have? I don't know, but it's all over. You have cancer. And okay, so what are my treatments? Well, I need to see you every Friday. I kept going every Friday. By this, I lost my hair, all facial hair. I was so swollen. Even my head was swollen. And I said, Doc, I am swollen. Look at my feet. I see them, but I want to see you next Friday. And I kept on doing this for 2 months, every Friday. And then he says, you know what? I need a second opinion. I'm going to get your dermatologist in on this. But I said, the dermatologist sent me here. And fast forward, I got an appointment with another hematologist. Turns out they did not accept my insurance. I was devastated, because by this time, I am all out of resources. I'm depending on this one person to point me in the right direction, and he's saying he doesn't know what kind of cancer I have. He called me, he says, I have a treatment for you. Treatment for what? What kind of cancer do I have? I don't know, but we're going to start treatment. No, you're not going to start treatment because you don't know what I have. Then the hospital that they recommended for me to go did not accept my insurance. Then they called me back, you should try Jefferson. And that was the beginning of my healing journey. I met this wonderful, kindest, understanding doctor, and he's in the one of the leaflets out there. His name is Dr. Pierluigi Porcu. He is the nicest person. He had, in 1 week, I had a diagnosis, I had a treatment plan, and 2 weeks' time, I started treatment. Started chemotherapy for 5 months. Actually, I was supposed to do it for 6 months, but at the 5th month, he said, you know, Carol, you're not where I want you to be. But I didn't hear that. You know what I heard? I'm better than I was 5 months ago. And he said, okay, we're going to start you on immunotherapy, and hopefully, you know, we'll take care of it. And for all the PET scans, CT scans, the blood treatment, he was right there. I didn't have any questions because all my questions were answered. He did not leave any stone unturned. And one thing he said to me, there are going to be bumps in the road. There are going to be bumps because with all these treatment, they knock you down. They really do. But I learned to look on the positive side, because for where I'm coming from and where I am, I could not wear clothing. Clothing would be like a thorn on my skin. I had no fingernails. I just went to do them a couple of days ago. I had no toenails. They're back now. Did them too. And I'm still going through treatment. I go once a month, every 28 days for 4 hours. I don't look at the 4 hours. I just look at, I'm one step closer to being healed. And that's a synopsis of my journey.
Carol, thank you. Yes, Dr. Porcu is a former board member of ours and has helped us do a lot of things in our research arena. I always call him my favorite Italian. Tell him I said that. Let's see. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Sabrina. How about you next? You use that one, whichever one.
All right.
So you were young.
Yeah.
You were younger than even me. I always thought I was a young person being diagnosed, you know, and so I think your experience and journey is a little different than many of us who might be a little bit older when we're diagnosed, which is a more typical, if there's a typical.
Yeah,
Right?
I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had, honestly, just before I start, I have a lot of friends watching, and my parents are here, and my brother, so I honestly would not be here without them in the sense of where I am in maintenance and the support. But yeah, I had a crazy experience. I always had these rough patches on my skin, I would say, for about 6 years or so before I was diagnosed, honestly, maybe earlier, and I just didn't realize it. And I was always told the eczema, the dry skin, the psoriasis, the dermatitis, and I just knew something was wrong, but honestly, I let it go because everybody just told me it was eczema. So I used all the creams, and then I believe it was one day, it was over Christmas, and I looked at my mom, and I couldn't even put clothes on or undergarments because it was honestly the same as you described, thorns, and I said something's wrong. So I got biopsies in New York with just dermatologists that took my insurance, and it took a really long time. I did the treatments for eczema, the laser treatment, and I had I knew something was wrong when I just had blisters all over my body. I mean, it was awful. And then being a young female too, and it was summertime, I remember, and I was just so insecure. But I then went home to my mom, and I said, something's wrong. And the doctor, the dermatologist, for some reason, she actually just tested for cutaneous T-cell lymphoma, and it came back positive. And she did it again. She did it twice and came back positive. So I had a total of about 7 biopsies. And I was diagnosed, and I actually go to Dr. Girardi at Yale, and he is the most amazing person I have ever met. And his team is great. They're always there for you. And I was diagnosed at age 22, and I was very secretive about it. I only told my family and my 2 grandparents and my uncle. So nobody really talked about it. It was we did what we had to do. I was living in New York, and I actually couldn't get phototherapy treatment pretty much anywhere. Everyone turned me down. They just told me they didn't have a spot for me, or they didn't have the hand-foot box, or they didn't do the type of phototherapy I needed, which I didn't really understand till this day. But then, I was actually working a full-time job at Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and I was working 40 hours a week, and I would get up, I would flex my hours, I would get up and go to work at 6:30, take the last train to New Haven, Connecticut. I would get the last appointment at the phototherapy unit. They would stay open for me. I would get my treatments, and I would start all over again. But my mom, the advocate she is for me, she got me into a phototherapy place at NYU Langone, and it took a couple months before they accepted me. And then my life my lunch breaks were my phototherapy time. And so it was, my life started coming together a little bit. And then COVID happened, which was really difficult. And my mom helped me get a home therapy unit. And then I actually had to go through radiation on the bottom of my foot. But honestly, that was, I don't know. I would just go after work, and I would leave radiation at around like 9:30, 10, because that was the only time I could do it. And it was honestly my time to listen to Taylor Swift. The radiation oncologist there listened to enough Taylor Swift, I think, during those couple weeks. But yeah, and then my life started coming together a little bit after COVID, having the home therapy unit, and I started talking more about it with my friends. I ran the New York City half marathon last year in representation of the CutaneousLymphomaFnd. And I just try to raise money and awareness. I think being young, I say it all the time, that I think I was diagnosed for a reason, and the reason is to speak out and be that young person to help other young people speak out about it, because I know it took me a really, really long time to even talk about this. So, but I'm doing great now. I do Valcalor every other week, and I do phototherapy every other week. As my friends call it, it's my tanning booth. They're always like, will I get tan from this? I'm like, you don't want to go in there. But yeah, so that's my journey, and I think this whole foundation, because it was really nice being young and just having somewhere to look for online. So it's my journey.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Thanks.
I'm going to try not to cry through all of this, because it's just so impactful, right? And I remember when we first met, because it was at a program hosted by Dr. Gaskin in New York City in an evening, torrential rainstorm.
Yes.
I was drenched by the time I got there, and that's where we met. You showed up for that program, and yeah, it was so cool.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Great. Joe.
Testing?
There
Yes.
you go, testing.
Thank you very much to the audio people. I wanted to use this since they worked so hard to bring this.
Yes. Yes. So your journey, again, a little different twist on the theme, right? Because and you'll talk about your diagnosis, but you've kind of been around the world, around the block with this disease in many, many iterations, and have been so supportive of other people over the years as well. So I'd like to have you share a little bit about kind of how.
Sure. Well, I mean, and speaking of being supportive of other people, I mean, that's what this organization is all about. And that's, I was so glad to find this organization. You know, when I was first diagnosed, you know, I had the silly idea that it was going to be one and done kind of thing. And that obviously was not the case. I had, you know, a cutaneous presentation, which is the disease, primary cutaneous anaplastic large cell lymphoma. And it was running pretty quick there. It was moving along and had presented quite quickly with some tumors. So we did some radiation therapy, and it worked like a charm. It was absolutely beautiful. So I was like, all right, smooth as a baby's bottom, I'm ready to go. Unfortunately, within 6 months, I was back at the doctor's office, and it had spread. And now that's one of the things that happens rarely with cutaneous ALCL. It happens maybe 5% of the time. So I got lucky. You know, I rolled the dice and kind of ended up on that side of things, which I said. That's why I said earlier I've been having fun ever since. And so I've had the opportunity then to go through some chemotherapy, immunotherapy, a bone marrow transplant, and you know, I have to say, it's been wonderful, and it's been harrowing, and I'm still here, and I'm with all these wonderful people.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
We're lovely. We're so thrilled to have you. And I know you do a lot of work on our monthly networking virtual groups that, you know, you join and help others and really try to support folks.
Well, I have to say that, you know, you mentioned earlier that we are a group of multiple, it's a group of diseases. It's not just one disease, it's a group of diseases. And so when I first started attending the DC area meetings, and because I live in the DC area. And thank you, Laurel, for beginning that group and for making it a welcoming place. But I have to say, I was the only person in the meeting with PCALCL. And week after week after week, I was the only person in the meeting with PCALCL, and most of the information was great for mycosis fungoides, but it was very little of it was where I was at that point for me. However, I've been with the group for a number of years now. We are collecting PCALCL members as we go. We've had several others show up, and so that's been good. But also in my multiple treatment regimens, I have found that the information at first that I didn't think was relevant for me has become very relevant for me now. So it's been very helpful.
Great, that's a good point. And I think that is something that, you know, one of the projects that I want to work on is really mapping out the total patient journey and all the different stages and iterations, because there isn't one patient journey. And wherever you may land along the way or how your journey rolls out, you may need different things, to your point. It might be a different treatment, or it might be a different kind of obstacle, or finding a light box, or, you know, different things along the way. And from the foundation's perspective, how do we best support you as an individual are going through your unique journey to provide you with the support, the resources, the connections, the things that you might need to be able to help you a lot more easily, right? And to find those people who might still be out there in the communities struggling, thinking they're alone and there isn't any help out there. So there's my pitch to everyone to say, if you're comfortable, tell people, right? Because I don't, my experience, it was so fascinating when I was first, well, no, maybe not first diagnosed, but for the first couple of years, my mom's boss's stepson ended up getting diagnosed because he was explaining to her the journey they were going through. And she said, well, maybe you should go see my daughter's doctor. And then the guy I was dating at the time, his mother got diagnosed, and I told her to go to my doctor. So it's this weird thing, right? If you're able and willing to share, you never know whose life you might help to get to the right diagnosis. So there's my little pitch. So as we wrap up, I thought I'd ask each of you one final question. So if you were to share a tip or something for someone else that's newly diagnosed or who's struggling, what would you offer as a piece of advice, a word of wisdom for someone that's grappling with a diagnosis or a change in treatment, or they feel like they've hit a wall? How do you keep going? So I'll start at the other end. I'll start with Joe, and we'll come back down around.
And I've had a number of changes in treatment, so I'll kind of focus there. I would say that, you have to have a respectful, trusting relationship with your doctor. However, I believe we also, as patients, especially with a rare disease, have some responsibility in the entire thing as well. So I say trust, and this is hearkening, some of you will know where this is coming from, trust, but verify.
I agree with that. I didn't speak a little bit about it, but I had a little bit of a, Dr. Girardi is still a little unsure, but I had a moment of, I think, a cousin of mycosis fungoides that popped up really, just showed really differently. He watched the biopsy grow, and still till this day, we just call it a cousin, no name, but so I think with that experience, I think trust is the biggest thing. But I also want to speak to, if anyone's streaming that is of the younger side of this disease, that take your time with it, because it's really hard. And I think especially female or male, skin is the first thing, or one of the first things that somebody sees. And I know I covered myself up that summer. I barely wore a bathing suit. I was just really embarrassed. And I think take your time with it. And when you do get comfortable, your friends, they're your friends. And that they're your family, because they will accept that if you have a big rash or something, that they don't even look at it. So take your time with it, and just know that when you're ready to, you can tell people about it, and it's a part of who you are. So I think that's my biggest advice for honestly anyone newly diagnosed.
That was really good. I would say a couple of things. I have a whole slide on this in my little presentation later on things that I wish I would have known. But I would say two of the ones that come to the top of importance for me is building a medical team, because I don't have a specialist in my area. I rely on both a lymphoma doctor to check me regularly. I have a dermatologist that knows my disease, and I have weird things that just pop up on my skin, and I had a skin cancer, and I just think my skin has difficulty fighting off anything now. So I have weird things going on all the time that aren't even related to this disease. So you have to have a good dermatologist, because, and then I had all sorts of side effects from things that I have seen millions of specialists about. So for me, I had to build a medical team that I was comfortable with, and it took me a couple of years to get to that point, and be my own advocate. And I guess the other thing I would say is I've arrived at a point where I need a combination of, I also see like a holistic doctor and look at lifestyle issues, lifestyle, diet, other like supplements, nutraceuticals, things I can be doing within my own realm of control to keep my body strong and as healthy as I can to deal with all the treatments when they are going on. So I kind of take a lifestyle approach to it, and then your mind, obviously. Your mind is very powerful to heal your body, and I am really trying to, it's a daily, I have not got this figured out, believe me, but it's a daily thing, getting up every day, trying to move towards living the life that I want to live, the high quality life that I want to live, regardless of this disease.
So for me, you have to surround yourself, my sister right there. You have to surround yourself with positive people. Because I never say my cancer, the disease that I have. My doctor, Dr. Porco, is my rock. One thing when I was diagnosed, he says, Carol, I will never lie to you. And from that point onward, I was like, whatever you say, I'll do. And those treatments, they will knock you down. But I try to tell everyone, find one positive thing for the day. One positive thing. And for every treatment is a step closer to you being healed. Every treatment, every blood work, every scan is one step closer to you being healed.
So beautiful. What a beautiful way to end. Thank you all. This was amazing. Absolutely amazing. Really wonderful. And yeah. And I think this is such a representation of the various faces of cutaneous lymphoma, right? We're everybody. Everybody and anybody, and you all were so courageous and brave. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here. Thank you for living your lives, even though we're all part of the cutaneous lymphoma community. So deeply appreciate you all, and look forward to more down the road.